This is an MSI Gaming PC build, and if my math is correct, this should come in at just under, maybe just over $1,000 US currently. Now, finding graphics cards at decent prices, it's gonna be pretty tough, especially now. We're going with an RX 5700 here. This is the Evoke MSI edition, and they are being sold used on eBay. You could also buy these new, but graphics card's really one of the only things that I would hesitate to buy currently. Everything else, though, should be fairly easy to get a hold of. So we've also got the 100R. This is a nice, healthy mid-tower with great airflow. We have the Mag B550 Tomahawk, good for our Ryzen 5 3600 XT. Going with the XT variant just because why not? We built so much with the regular Ryzen 5 3600, I figured we'd change it up a bit. Powering everything is an A650 GF power supply from MSI. It's an 80 plus gold rated modular unit. And then we've got two 500 gig SSDs from Team Group, and then some, as Kyle would call it, Pat Riot DDR4, just kidding, Patriot Viper DDR4, pretty fast modules, RGB capable. I think that's it. Wow, it's like the first time I've gone through everything in one take. Let's start building. So we've got our motherboard, CPU, and our RAM to get started. Let's get this thing out of the box. Now, a bit about this board. It does have an integrated rear IO shield, so if you don't see us installing one, it's because it's already there. The chipset here, B550, means we don't have active cooling, which is nice. You don't need to tweak an extra fan, and these things in X570 boards get very loud because they are so small. They need to turn very fast to displace a decent amount of air. There are also many fan hubs on this board, which is always nice to see. Now, for our 3600 XT, I've decided to go with the stock cooler. I don't usually like to stick with stock coolers, but AMD does a fairly good job with their box coolers. And honestly, this one here is pretty thick. So it's not the Wraith Stealth. I think this is just the Wraith or the Wraith Spire. I always get confused on the names here. This one is fairly tall. It does not have a copper slug, but it is thicker than the Stealth version of this cooler. And AMD paired things this way because our 3600 XT is going to consume a bit more power. It can clock a bit higher. And the same old routine, lifting the lever, making sure orientation is correct, dropping the chip in, and pull that retention arm back down. Boom, there we go. So we've got to remove this, well, both of these retention brackets here for that stock cooler. Take these off. We're going to leave the back plate. You can see these little standoffs poking through. We have some thermal paste here from Thermal Grizzly, and we're going to do the good old X pattern here. It's a little ugly, a little fugly, but it'll work. And I'm just going to smash the cooler down like so. Make sure those threads are aligned with the standoffs. And here comes the sketchy part. Just horrible sounds that you hear when you have to secure a AMD stock cooler. Oh yeah. Oh, that's just music to my ears. Is that not the most cringe thing you've ever... Oh, shit. Well, I have confirmed that the board is okay. Sorry about that. I'm sure that gave some of you a heart attack. Not my proudest screw with confidence moment. This cooler is pretty much locked and loaded. Oh yeah. And we're gonna wire up the cable. Let's see, CPU fan 1, we'll just stick with the conventional fan hub spot. Tuck in the cable a bit. Now for RAM, this motherboard denotes slots A2 and B2 for first install. That would be this one and this one. Notches aligned. Sliding in our Patriot Viper DDR4. Gotta say, I'm digging the subtle gold accents on these modules. And if you didn't already notice, these will more or less match the gold on our RX 5700 Evoke. Now we'll get the motherboard in the case. So we've got our standoffs installed already. Move our cables out of the way. Slide this thing on in. Looking good. Screws, screws, screws. Isn't it nice when things line up the first time? And all right, things are looking good so far. Now we're gonna take care of some of the small wiring. So front panel audio, USB 3.0, things like that we'll take care of now. It becomes much more difficult to take care of those things once the power supply and graphics card are installed. So that takes care of front panel audio. I've got USB 3.0. The only header on this board is here, but I think we can make it work. There we go, not too shabby. HD audio over here. Now we've got all of our cables routed down a central channel here. This is right next to the cutouts for the 24 pin. So this here is a little hub for the RGB. And that's powered by SATA connector here. And then you can control everything by plugging this cable. This is an ARGB header, or a little connector, into a header on the motherboard. Next up, we have our Delta Max RGB SSDs nuts from Team Group. Now these look like they have built-in screens. It's just a cool RGB effect. They aren't functional as screens at all. But I've gone with 2 of these just because I wanted to fill out the SSD trays that'll be exposed through the left side panel in this case. I think it'll look really nice to have 2 of them there. I'm not sure we're gonna RAID 1 or RAID 0 these. I don't really think there's a need to, especially with these drives here. I mean, you could have an extra hard drive for Steam library, Epic library, or the like, but I think 1 terabyte is a good starting point. I know Kyle got excited for this next part. I told him what I was gonna do here. I gotta pull this thing out. It's stuck, there we go. Ready for this, Kyle? Oh yeah. Boy, looking good. You know, honestly, this is a pretty sweet looking SSD, even with the RGBs off. So these SSDs mount in the 100R like this. So one of my hands kind of in the way, but one will be mounted upright or toward the top, and the other will be mounted facing down, or at least that's where the ports will be facing down. And then you'll route all of your cables through this large cutout here. We connect the SSDs to the chassis through these holes here, and then of course you use the included screws. So we're gonna do that now, and then we'll take care of the wiring right after.
Hey everybody, Village Idiot Kyle here. Shocker on my end, I forgot to make sure my recording audio was on, and thus we don't have any audio for a couple clips. So Greg has asked me to go in and do a voiceover, which I'm sure he will regret.
It's gonna be a mistake.
But nonetheless, we're going to do this. So without further ado, let's hop right into it. Okay, so here, Greg is showing off the Evoke 5700 MSI card, a graphics card that we were going to be using. We chose this card because of its gold accents. It really helps it to pop with the white RGB we plan to use. Well, I guess not really RGB.
Are you eating chips while you're narrating?
I'm narrating, like you said. First, we're going to start off the battery supply. Okay, so we just got done plugging in the 2 4-pin here. We got the, I believe, CPU 8-pin and another 8-pin, and then 2 6-pins that are for SATA, as it looks like on the power supply. And so we are using MSI's own power supply here. This goes beautifully in the Forge 100R case that we are building with. And as you can see now, Greg is installing that. He's having to move some of the cables out of the way because his cable management is subpar right now. Hasn't really taken the time to adjust that, but it is a little bit of a tight fit at first, but that's because we had to run the SATA cables.
Yeah.
Is it SATA cables?
I think.
Well, this is one of my favorite parts. This is where Greg actually screws the battery into the case. And here's Greg actually plugging in the CPU to the top left of the case on the motherboard. Here he is entering the 2 4-pin.
Stop eating chips.
Sorry. And last but not least, he is going to plug in our Saturn V cables. They connect up to the RGB so that we can get RGB throughout the case, and they will also power our SSDs nuts cards. I think it's going pretty well, man. He's trying to distract you from his cable management there. He doesn't want you to notice how poorly it is and that piece sticking out. But as you can see, it's a little bit of a rat's nest, so we're going to go ahead and tackle that. But first, you must take a look at this beautiful Evoke graphics card. Now, the color is a little off. It doesn't appear as goldish as it does in person. It's more of like a bronze hue in the screen. But it does suit the case well, especially with the black accents that we have going on in there. It pops, and this is exactly what Greg is saying going on in this video right now. You just can't tell because there is no audio, but I got you guys. So what he's gonna go ahead and do now is install this graphics card into the case. Look at that, told you. So we have to remove 2 back plates on the case. See, there he is pointing to 1 and 2, and he's gonna remove those.
Our mic is working again. Thanks, Kyle, for screwing that up. Anyway, installing, pretty straightforward. We're gonna slide this thing in. Where is the slot? Right there. Okay. Yeah, looking good. I realize you can't really see too much gold in the RAM just because the only gold text is on top here and it's very faint. There's a bit of gold to the right of each module, but you're not really gonna see that. It still looks good. I think this is just it's unique, okay? All right, just chill, just chill. And supplemental PCIe power, 1 6-pin there. I'm gonna have this extra 2-pin just stuffed somewhere where people can't see it. And the 8-pin, just gonna slide in right next to it. All right, now we'll try to clean this up just a tad. And we're gonna take care of some last minute cable management here. All right, so I've taken care of cable management as best I could. There are several tie strap points, which is great. So if you use zip ties, tie straps, anything to keep these cables down. I used a lot of them for the stock cables originally, and I'm just kind of like gonna try to crunch the 24 pin down. I think that it looks like there's enough space back here. I'm gonna try to get the right panel on, see how easy it locks in. So give it a bit of force here. And actually it just latches in toward the front, and then you just swing it around and it clips in at the rear. So installation's pretty easy. That's literally it. Really nice, super simple, easier than I thought it would be. It's always just a good way to end things when you can squeeze that right panel on without serious issue. So this here is what the build looks like turned off, but completed. I think it looks really good as is. Again, I like that the graphics card just stands out. Everything's pretty much blacked out with the exception of the small gold accents on the RAM, and then of course this large gold graphics card. I think it looks good. It'd look a bit worse if there were, you know, a bunch of other random colors mixed in, but black and gold I think looks really classy. Now, when we turn the system on, the RGBs I'm sure will be set to their default rainbow effect. That's not gonna be cool. We're gonna try to sync all of those up, so especially with the RAM, the included ARGB fans, and then you can control that with the case. There's a button in the case that you can click to kind of cycle through some modes, but I think we're just gonna control it through the motherboard software. Once we get those synced up, probably to white, then we can really judge this system for how good it looks. And I'm assuming we can sync up the SSDs as well. If not, I might just keep those off, but we'll find out. By the way, in case you're wondering, the tempered glass panel included with the Force 100R from MSI is slightly tinted. It's obviously not totally transparent, but I'm okay with this. I just don't like the really dark tinted glass. So it's good to see that this is gonna allow you to see pretty clearly into your case and look at that beautiful cable management and the beautiful components inside. So we've synced up the LEDs. Now we do have B-roll of the RAM actually lit. I'm not sure why all of a sudden it cut out. RGB will be RGB, but the system is still stable, and we'll show you guys a 3D Mark time spy run here in a second, but I wanted to also show you how it looked just with subtle white LED accents. The SSDs, again, another issue with RGB, unrelated to MSI. We have these connected via USB 2.0, and there are cables included in the boxes of those SSDs, but there is no software to configure the SSDs that way. You have to connect them to addressable headers on the motherboard where they can be controlled, in this case via MSI Mystic Light. Problem is, I only have 2 of those ARGB headers, and one of them is being used for the case and the front fans. So one of these SSDs wouldn't be able to be manually controlled, so there was just no point there. So that's why they're RGB, just kind of rainbow looking, but they're not like super bright or anything. They're subtle. I still think the build overall looks pretty sweet. The Evoke 5700 is holding its own, and the 3600 XT is still plenty viable for gaming in 2021. I know people look at 6 cores now, like we used to look at 4 cores, like, oh, 6 cores is a low end. That's sometimes not enough for gaming, and especially gaming and streaming, but in this case here, and in most 6-core multi-threaded cases, you'll find that it is still plenty. Don't let the fearmongers and forums scare you. These chips are more than capable, and you should still consider them for the right price. And what does a Ryzen 5 3600 XT and 5700 combo get you in 3D Mark Time Spy? Well, it gets you a score better than 68% of all submitted results. That ain't too shabby. With that, be sure to check out all of these parts linked below if you want to build something very similar. Again, the graphics card is going to be the one exception just because of how things are now, but I encourage you to look everywhere you can to find the best deal on a card like this, at least for a $1,000 or so budget build. Be sure to click the subscribe button if you have not already. Be sure to click the like button, leave your feedback in the comments below, and we'll catch you in the next one. My name is Greg. Thanks for building with me.